Mr. Nader?
Yes, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Baldwin, the following. I take it you are an originalist. You want the Constitution to be interpreted strictly, and you probably like Justice Scalia and Justice Thomas. The corporation, as a word, doesn't appear in our Constitution. Yet in 1886, in a rogue Supreme Court opinion that wasn't even in the opinion, it was in the head notes written by the scribe, a railroad was given equal protection under the laws as a person under our Constitution. Now, I spoke with Justice Scalia a few days ago, and I said, you know, I sent you 2 letters over the last 2 years asking, as the prime originalist on the Supreme Court, where do you stand on artificial entities like corporations, not their employees, having the same constitutional rights as real human beings? It just doesn't seem reflective of the Constitution. And he said, well, it's been settled for so long, I haven't done the research and I haven't thought about it. If we get a case, then I'll do the research and I'll think about it, but I don't have time to do it now. I want to ask you, do you think corporations as artificial entities should have equal constitutional rights with real human beings, especially the right to engage in politics, to engage in elections, to set up PACs, and to lobby legislature?
The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, was written for a free people. And I believe that the civil liberties that you're speaking of pertain to people. I am opposed to corporate welfare, just as I'm sure you are. I am opposed to all that has been done lately to corporatize our political systems. And this is where you and I are going to be in great agreement. I believe that the corporations of America today hold sway over the 2 political parties. I think this was seen in the bailout. We both know that both Barack Obama and John McCain received millions of dollars from Freddie and Fannie, and they just both happened to get up and support the bailout. So I think we see this throughout both parties, and it's a part of the problem that we have today. And I certainly concur that the rights and freedoms that are expressed in these great documents are for persons.
Not for corporations.
Not for corporations.
Well, that's going to be a growing convergence of the so-called left and the right. And I think the consequences of subordinating the corporate entity to the sovereignty of the people, because the Constitution doesn't start we the corporation,
right.
It starts we the people.
Exactly.
The consequences for sound public policy and for redressing this enormous imbalance of power between corporate power and people power will be quite beneficial for our democracy.
We're going to ask a few questions from the audience, and I'm going to throw in a couple questions too, and then each of you will have a 2-minute closing statement before we finish. I'd like to first deal with the issue of global warming. How serious a problem do you think it is? Do you consider it man-made, and what do you propose to do about it, Mr. Baldwin?
I'm very skeptical about Al Gore's interpretation of global warming. I prefer personally to believe that it's cyclical and natural. I certainly do not subscribe to the version of global warming that many on the left seem to perpetuate. So my personal feeling is I'm skeptical. I'm willing to study it. I'm willing to look at it further. I'm open-minded, of course, to science, but to use in the environment and supposed global warming. I read a journal the other day that said that we may be now going into a global cooling period, and we had a very severe winter in many parts of the country and other parts of the world as well, just this past winter, and some are predicting the same for this winter.
Okay.
So I'd love to study that a little bit more and get some more information on it, but just personally, Chris, I'm skeptical.
Okay. Mr. Nader?
Yeah, I think it's here. You just have to look what's happening in Alaska, the Andes, the Antarctic, Greenland. Is clearly here. The temperatures are increasing at an accelerating rate, and just in the last decade it has stunned global climate specialists and scientists. Whether it's due to human behavior, I think there's an overwhelming scientific consensus that greenhouse gases, which are increasing very rapidly from motor vehicles, from industries and other sources, are accelerating climate change in that respect. I think the key is to transform our country and world to renewable solar energy and geothermal, and while it's being done, to dramatically increase the technological efficiencies of heating, air conditioning, electric systems, and motor vehicles and other forms that are now burning fossil fuels that are creating so many of these greenhouse gases.
Let me ask about reproductive rights. You are pro-life, and certainly there is an epidemic of the use of abortions in America, many people sort of resorting to abortion as a form of birth control. But the question is, if you outlaw abortion, and you look at societies that have outlawed abortion, I covered, for instance, Romania under Ceausescu, the result where abortion was illegal to boost the population level. Isn't what you end up, it isn't that abortion goes away. Isn't it that the wealthy still provide abortions for their wives and girlfriends and mistresses, and the poor people die in a back room through unclean practices of abortion practices?
Well, Chris, we don't legalize murder because some people still commit murder in the back alleys. We don't legalize thievery because some people still steal in the middle of the night. We did not have legal abortion until 1973 in this country, as you know, with the Roe v. Wade decision. And by the way, this is something where I believe that our Republican friends really need to hang their head in disgrace. They control the entire federal government from 2000 to 2006. They gained that prominence largely by promising the pro-life / evangelical / conservative Christian people in this country that if they were elected to Washington, D.C., that they would do something to end Roe v. Wade and abortion on demand. That was a major part of their plank in 2000. And from 2000 to 2006, they controlled the entire federal government. When George W. Bush became president in January of 2001, over 1 million innocent unborn babies were being slaughtered in their mother's wombs every year in the United States. When President Bush leaves office in January 2009, there's still over 1 million innocent unborn babies that are being slaughtered in the wombs of their mothers. The Republican Party was completely derelict in their commitment to life.
Thank you. Mr. Nader?
Well, Nader Gonzalez's campaign does not believe the government has a coercive role here. It's too personal a decision. It's what Roscoe Pound once called beyond the effective limits of legal action. He was dean of Harvard Law School, and he used that phrase to deal with prohibition, that you're not going to be able to enforce prohibition because the violation and resistance to bans on drinking alcohol far transcend any ability of the law enforcement to affect it, quite apart from its policy merits. Romania was an example where women were forced to have children. China is an example where women were forced not to have children, both by government edict. And that is not something that government has a role. It's interesting, you're for government on this one, and I'm against government on this one. The other point is it does breed a overwhelming violation and resistance. Anything that deals with such a personal decision or anything that deals with addictive processes have to be dealt with education, with respect, with nurturing, and with an attempt to try to reduce the number of unplanned pregnancies, especially among teenage women. So that's the way it has to go in that process. It's not going to work with government either saying you must have children or you must not have children.